Oh my God, Jules, did I forget to tell you? Melissa gasped as the receptionist informed me my interview had happened an hour ago. I stood there, in a coffee-stained blazer 2 sizes too small, while my sister stared at her phone, pretending this wasn't sabotage. She hadn't just ruined my shot at the job, she'd set me up to be humiliated. Again, just like she did at prom, just like she did after my divorce. But this time, I wasn't leaving in tears, because the CEO had seen everything, and what he said next made Melissa's face go white. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Julia Merritt, and I'm 39 years old. From my small but sun-filled apartment on Oak Street, I've spent the last year rebuilding what my divorce left behind. My older sister, Melissa Merritt, always the successful one, towers over the corporate world in her corner office while I work freelance communications from my kitchen table. The family photos on my wall tell a story she doesn't see. How her smile tightens when I succeed. How she takes credit for my ideas at family dinners. My fingertips brush the worn leather journal where I've documented every borrowed concept, every undermining comment, every project she's claimed as her own. Melissa thinks I'm still the quiet one who stays in her place. But I've learned patience has power. Some shadows grow roots before they bloom. The Tuesday morning my phone lit up with Melissa's name, I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken since that awkward Christmas dinner, where she'd somehow convinced Mom that my cranberry sauce recipe was actually hers. You know how families are, sometimes silence is easier than confrontation. But I did answer, and her voice bubbled through the speaker like champagne at a wedding. Jules, the most amazing opportunity just landed in my lap, and I immediately thought of you. Melissa's words tumbled out in that rapid-fire way she uses when she's excited. Or performing. We have a senior communications position opening up at the firm, and I may have mentioned your name to HR. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. You... what? I know. I should have asked first. But Jules, this could be huge for you. Especially after... everything. She delicately sidestepped mentioning my divorce, as always. The interview's next Thursday. I'll help you prepare. I pressed my fingers against my temple, trying to process this sudden shift. Melissa hadn't offered to help me with anything since... well, I couldn't remember when. That's really thoughtful of you, Mel. Of course. What are sisters for? She paused. Oh, and don't worry about what to wear. I have the perfect blazer. Barely worn designer label. It'll make an amazing first impression. 2 days later, Melissa swept into my apartment carrying a garment bag like it held the crown jewels. This is going to look incredible on you, she gushed, unzipping it with a flourish. The blazer was beautiful, cream-colored wool with subtle gold buttons. But something nagged at me as I lifted it from the bag. Mel, this looks... small? Oh, it's just the cut. Very European. Try it on. I slipped my arms through the sleeves, and immediately my shoulders screamed in protest. The fabric pulled tight across my back, and the sleeves barely reached my wrists. I don't think... It's perfect. Melissa clapped her hands. The tailored look is so in right now. I twisted to check the label. This is a petite size. I'm 5'9". Don't be silly, I wore this all last season. She waved away my concern like smoke. And anyway, the lighting in here is terrible. It'll look completely different at the office. That's when I noticed the faint brown splotch near the left lapel. Is that... coffee? What? No, it's just a shadow. Melissa's phone chimed, and she glanced at it with exaggerated surprise. Oh, I'm late for a meeting. You'll rock this interview, Jules. Trust me. A week later, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, trying to convince myself the blazer situation wasn't as bad as it felt. The sleeves now ended a good 2 inches above my wrists, no matter how much I tugged. The coffee stain, because that's definitely what it was, seemed to catch every ray of light. Remember when we were kids, and Mom would make us wear hand-me-downs that never quite fit? That same helpless feeling crept over me as I smoothed the fabric for the 100th time. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Can't wait to see you crush this? Something about that emoji made my skin prickle. Or maybe it was how the blazer cut into my armpits when I reached for my portfolio. The elevator ride up to Melissa's firm felt endless. She'd insisted on meeting me in the lobby, and when the doors finally opened, there she stood. perfect in her power suit, that signature platinum bob gleaming under the fluorescence. Her smile was wide, practiced, almost theatrical. "Jules? Right on time." She air-kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of her expensive perfume, the same scent she'd worn to my wedding. To my divorce proceedings, too. "That blazer looks even better than I remembered." My stomach clenched. The way she said it, like she was savoring each word. I tugged at the too tight sleeves again, fighting the urge to wrap my arms around myself. The coffee stain felt like a beacon, broadcasting something I couldn't quite name. Melissa's smile never wavered, but her eyes, they had that same glint they'd get when we were children, just before she'd tell Mom about something I'd done. The receptionist looked up as we approached, and for a split second, confusion flickered across her face. My chest tightened. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, in the way the too small blazer seemed to squeeze tighter with each step. I approached the sleek reception desk, trying to project confidence despite the blazer cutting into my shoulders. "Hi, I'm Julia Merritt. I have an interview scheduled for—" "Merritt?" The receptionist's perfectly penciled brows drew together. She tapped at her keyboard, frowning. "But that was— Oh." She looked up at me, then at Melissa, then back at her screen. "I'm sorry, there seems to be some confusion. The interview was rescheduled to 8:30 this morning. It ended about an hour ago." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "That's impossible. I wasn't notified of any change." I turned to Melissa, but she was suddenly very interested in her phone. "Mel? Oh my God, Jules, did I forget to tell you?" Her eyes went wide with practiced innocence. "I could have sworn I texted you about the time change. My calendar's been so crazy lately. You know that feeling when your whole body goes cold, then hot, then cold again? When you realize you've been played but can't quite prove it? Yeah, that. Were there any instructions left for me?" I asked the receptionist, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Remember when we were kids and Melissa would forget to tell me about birthday party time changes, leaving me to show up hours late?" The same sick feeling pooled in my stomach now. The receptionist glanced between us again, clearly uncomfortable. "Let me check something. Please wait here." I stood there, clutching my portfolio like a shield, while Melissa tapped away at her phone. The lobby's modern art installation, all sharp angles and cold steel, seemed to mock my predicament. 5 minutes crawled by. 10. "Well, this is awkward," Melissa finally sighed. "But you know how these things go. Maybe we can reschedule for next—" "Ms. Merritt!" We both turned. A tall man in an impeccable navy suit stood by the elevator bank. Even without knowing his face from the company website, his presence alone screamed, "CEO." Franklin DeWitt's calm gaze swept over us both before settling on me. "Would you join me in my office?" Melissa's head snapped up from her phone. "Franklin, I can explain." He held up one hand, silencing her without even looking her way. "Just Ms. Julia Merritt, please." I followed him down a corridor of glass and steel, past rows of curious eyes. My ill-fitting blazer felt like a flashing sign advertising my amateur status. We entered a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, and he gestured for me to sit. "Coffee?" "No, thank you." My voice came out steadier than I felt. He settled behind his desk, studying me with the kind of measured attention that made me wonder if he could see right through to my racing heart. "Your resume is impressive. Strategic communications at Morton & Reed, digital transformation at Apex Solutions, strong recommendations." He paused. "Tell me something, Ms. Merritt. What do you think your sister hoped would happen today?" Heat bloomed in my chest. The question hung in the air like smoke, heavy with implication. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. What could I say? That my sister had deliberately sabotaged me? That she'd set me up to fail? The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Let me rephrase. Do you believe Melissa wanted you to succeed this morning?" My fingers twisted in my lap. The coffee stain on my lapel felt like it was burning through to my skin. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his desk. "I have a proposition for you, Ms. Merritt." His dark eyes held mine, and for the first time that morning, I felt seen. Really seen. One that might interest you considerably. DeWitt's proposition caught me completely off guard. "A 6-week trial position," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "On our strategic communications team." He paused, watching my reaction. Under Melissa's supervision. My heart did a weird little stutter. Was this a consolation prize? A pity offer? But something in his steady gaze told me there was more to it. The role would start immediately, he continued. Temporary contract, with potential for permanent placement based on performance. He leaned back, fingers steepled. What do you think? What did I think? I thought about the torn blazer lining scratching against my skin. About the rescheduled interview I was never meant to know about. About Melissa's perfectly practiced look of surprise in the lobby. You ever have one of those moments when you just know the universe is handing you something important? This was mine. When can I start? The words came out before I could second-guess them. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Tomorrow morning, HR will have your paperwork ready. He stood, extending his hand. Welcome aboard, Ms. Merritt. Walking out of his office, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass walls, disheveled blazer and all. But somehow I looked different. Stronger, maybe. Or just more determined. Melissa was nowhere to be seen when I left the building. No surprise there. Remember how she used to disappear whenever Mom caught us fighting, leaving me to explain everything? Some patterns never change. I spent the afternoon in my apartment, sorting through my closet for tomorrow's outfit. My phone stayed suspiciously quiet until after dinner, when Melissa's name finally lit up the screen. Jules, her voice dripped honey. I felt terrible about the mix-up this morning. How are you holding up? Actually, I said, keeping my tone light, I'm doing great. Mr. DeWitt offered me a position. The line went so quiet I thought we'd lost connection. What? The honey evaporated. A 6-week trial. On the strategic communications team. I paused, then added the knife twist. Your team. The silence stretched longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had gone flat. That dangerous tone I remembered from childhood confrontations. You weren't supposed to take that. 5 words. That's all it took for everything to crystallize. The too small blazer, the phantom schedule change, the calculated humiliation. None of it was a mix-up or a favor. It was a carefully orchestrated trap. Wasn't I? I kept my voice steady, even as my free hand clenched into a fist. What was I supposed to do, Mel? Leave quietly, she snapped, like a normal person would after missing their interview. But I wasn't supposed to miss the interview, was I? I was supposed to be crushed by it, humiliated, sent running with my tail between my legs. Well, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I start tomorrow. I'm sure you'll show me the ropes. Jules, her voice held a warning. See you in the morning, sis. I ended the call and sat there in my quiet apartment, letting the reality sink in. The interview wasn't a gift. It was meant to be my professional execution. But instead of lying down and taking it, I'd somehow landed at a borrowed desk inside Melissa's carefully controlled kingdom. My phone buzzed with a text. This won't end well. Classic Melissa, always needing the last word. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. The same view I'd had since my divorce, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, I had a front row seat to something bigger than Melissa's games, and I was going to observe everything. That first week felt like walking through a minefield in stilettos. Every morning, I'd arrive early. Unlike Melissa, who'd breeze in 20, sometimes 30 minutes late, designer coffee in hand. No one dared mention it, of course. They were too busy scrambling to cover the meetings she'd missed. You know that feeling when you're watching a car crash in slow motion? That's what it was like, sitting in my temporary cubicle, witnessing Melissa's daily performance. Sarah, didn't you say you'd handle the Wilson account briefing? She'd drawl during team meetings, knowing full well she hadn't passed along the necessary files. Poor Sarah, fresh out of college, would stammer and flush while Melissa watched with that practiced, concerned manager expression. I kept my head down, but my ears open. My notebook filled with innocent-looking meeting notes, dates, times, incidents. Like how Jenny from accounting nearly broke down after Melissa questioned her commitment over a family emergency. Or how Tom's proposal was suddenly lost, right before the client presentation he was supposed to lead. The break room was its own special kind of theater. Julia, honey, Melissa would say, loud enough for others to hear, you really should try that new salon I mentioned. They work miracles with... She'd wave vaguely at my entire existence, classic Melissa, making suggestions that were really criticisms in disguise. Remember how she used to help me pick outfits for high school dates? Always steering me toward clothes that made me look washed out or frumpy, while she borrowed mom's designer pieces. Some habits die hard. Late one night, I was reviewing old portfolio samples, partly to prepare for upcoming projects, partly to avoid another evening alone with my thoughts. That's when I saw it. A pitch deck from 3 years ago, one I'd created for a sustainable energy startup. Except this version had Melissa's name on it. Every word, every concept, my work, repackaged under her letterhead. My hands started shaking. I remembered how proud I'd been of that campaign, how it had felt like my first real breakthrough. And she'd just taken it, like everything else. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Remember that freelance contract I lost last year? The one that was supposed to help me finally move out of my post-divorce apartment? I'd always wondered why they'd pulled out so suddenly. Well, guess what I found buried in my spam folder? An old email thread, forwarded by mistake. Someone warning my client about their concerns regarding my reliability. Describing me as emotionally unstable and professionally erratic. The sender's name was hidden, but I recognized the writing style, the carefully crafted poison. Pure Melissa. I sat there in my dark apartment, staring at my laptop screen until the words blurred. My throat felt tight, like I was trying to swallow broken glass. This wasn't just office politics or sibling rivalry. This was systematic destruction, personal sabotage. All those years of helping me, the backhanded compliments, the undermining suggestions, the stolen opportunities. It had never been about lifting me up. It had been about keeping me down. My phone lit up with a text from her. Team breakfast tomorrow? My treat. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a new document and started typing. Every incident, every manipulation, every piece of evidence, the late arrivals, the blamed subordinates, the stolen credit, the sabotaged careers. The cursor blinked at me like a heartbeat. I thought about Sarah's trembling hands during meetings, about Jenny's tears in the bathroom, about Tom's lost proposal and my stolen pitch deck. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was a pattern, a system of control and cruelty that affected everyone in Melissa's orbit. My hands weren't shaking anymore as I typed. Each keystroke felt like armor being forged, like weapons being sharpened. You want to know the funny thing about shadows? When you've lived in them long enough, you learn to see things others miss. You notice patterns, you collect proof, you build your case in silence, and sometimes, just sometimes, you find exactly what you need to step into the light. Have you ever felt that strange calm that comes after a huge revelation? Like your mind's gone quiet because it's finally processing something you've known all along? That's how I felt the morning after discovering Melissa's email sabotage. I walked into the office with new eyes and a new purpose. Morning, Julia. Melissa's voice carried across the open floor plan. Love that sweater, though maybe a bit casual for client meetings. She smiled sweetly while several heads turned our way. I just nodded, already noting the time. 9:47 a.m. Another late arrival for my growing document. The next few weeks became an exercise in patience and precision. I created a spreadsheet, innocent looking on the surface, coded with dates, times, and incidents. Every time Melissa took credit for someone else's work, I documented it. Every casual, undermining comment, every missed deadline she blamed on others, every manipulative team interaction, all of it went into my digital vault. Remember playing detective as kids? How we'd follow Dad around with our little notepads, writing down clues about where he hid our birthday presents? This felt like that, except the stakes were real, and the clues revealed something much darker. Sarah, we discussed this timeline last week, Melissa announced during the Monday briefing. Why isn't it done? I watched Sarah's face crumple. But you never sent me the client parameters you mentioned. I most certainly did. Melissa's voice carried that perfect note of authority. Check your emails. Later, I helped Sarah search her inbox. No parameters, no email, just another incident for my growing list. The break room became my favorite observation post. It's amazing what people say when they think no one's really listening. She took my proposal, Tom confided to Jenny one morning, voice low, changed 2 words and presented it as her own concept. Jenny just nodded, stirring her coffee with defeated familiarity. Last month, she told the client I'd missed a crucial deadline, but I have proof I submitted everything 3 days early. I added their stories to my collection, building a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Then came the email from HR, confidential team restructuring initiative, your feedback matters. They were seeking anonymous case studies about team dynamics and leadership challenges. My heart actually skipped. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by sticky notes and documentation. The same lamp that had illuminated Melissa's sabotage email now lit my path to something like justice. I organized my notes into clear categories: time management, team impact, project attribution, communication patterns, and morale effects. I crafted the case study carefully: professional, objective, fact-based. No emotional language, just data. Times, dates, patterns, and measurable impacts. I described how the manager consistently arrived late while demanding early attendance from others, how projects mysteriously changed ownership near completion, how junior staff turnover had doubled in the past year. My fingers paused over the keyboard when I reached the impact section. The weight of all those affected careers, all those diminished confidences, settled on my shoulders. I thought about Sarah's trembling hands, Jenny's defeated coffee stirring, Tom's stolen proposal, about my own stolen work, my sabotaged opportunities. I included it all, anonymized but authentic. Every incident documented, every pattern revealed, every impact measured. At 11:42 p.m., I hit send. The next morning, my email pinged while I was still on my second coffee. The subject line made my stomach flip. Meeting request, Franklin DeWitt, CEO, confidential discussion. Time, 2:15 p.m. today. Location, executive suite. Duration, 30 minutes. Notes, private meeting to discuss organizational development. The calendar invitation sat there, waiting for my response. My cursor hovered over accept, while my heart drummed against my ribs. This wasn't just another meeting. This was the moment everything could change, or explode in my face. I thought about Melissa, probably sitting in her office right now, unaware that her carefully constructed kingdom might be crumbling. About all the people she'd stepped on, pushed down, manipulated. My hand wasn't shaking anymore as I moved the mouse. One click could start an avalanche. One click could change everything. I pressed accept. The executive floor felt different at 1:58 p.m., quieter, more intentional. Even the air seemed filtered through layers of power and decision. My sensible heels clicked against marble as I approached the CEO's office, each step echoing like a countdown. You know that moment before a storm breaks? When the air gets thick and your skin prickles with electricity? That's exactly how it felt. Franklin DeWitt's assistant nodded me straight in. The CEO stood by his floor-to-ceiling windows, hands clasped behind his back, studying the city below. He turned as I entered, and something in his expression made me catch my breath. He wasn't just prepared for this meeting. He'd been waiting for it. "Please sit." He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "I appreciate punctuality." I smoothed my skirt, not borrowed, not sabotaged, and took my seat. My heart hammered, but my voice stayed steady. "Thank you for making time to meet." He settled into his chair, picked up a folder I recognized as my case study, and laid it open between us. "This is exceptional work. Thorough. Precise." His eyes met mine. And entirely accurate. My fingers twisted in my lap. "Sir, Let me be direct," he said, leaning forward. "I know you wrote this report. The attention to detail, the strategic analysis, it matches your work style perfectly. What you may not know is that we've been watching this situation develop for some time." The air seemed to thin. "Watching?" He nodded, pulling out another folder. "Your original application came to us through Martinez and Associates, an external recruiting firm. They flagged you as a perfect fit for our strategic communications role." He paused, letting that sink in. "Melissa never submitted your name. In fact, when she learned you were scheduled for an interview, she tried to have it canceled entirely." The betrayal hit like ice water in my veins. Every false smile, every helpful suggestion, it was worse than sabotage. It was calculated destruction. Remember when we were kids and Mom would say, "Your sister knows best"? God, if she could see us now. "The interview scheduling mix-up," I said slowly. "That wasn't a mistake." "No." Franklin's voice was gentle but firm. "She deliberately gave you the wrong time, then tried to have you marked as a no-show. But I had already seen your portfolio, your recommendations, your track record." He closed both folders. "I needed to see how you'd handle it." My throat felt tight. "The temporary position was a test, yes, but not of your skills." He leaned back, studying me. I needed to see your character, how you'd respond to unfairness, whether you'd crack under pressure or rise above it. A slight smile touched his lips. You exceeded every expectation. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I don't understand. We're making a leadership change. He stood, walking to the window again. Melissa's position will be vacant as of tomorrow morning. Her methods have finally caught up with her. I gripped the arms of my chair, steadying myself. And you're telling me this because... He turned back, his expression both serious and encouraging. Because I'm offering you the role. Starting tomorrow. The words hung in the air between us, impossible and real at the same time. My pulse roared in my ears. I know it's sudden, he continued, but you've already proven yourself. Not just professionally, but ethically. You handled a personal betrayal with grace and strategy. You protected your team while building a rock-solid case. He returned to his desk. That's the kind of leadership we need. I drew a careful breath. Does Melissa know? She's being informed right now. He checked his watch. HR is handling the transition. Security will supervise her office clearance this afternoon. His eyes met mine again. The question is, are you ready to step up? The next morning hit different. You know that surreal feeling when something huge changes but the world just keeps spinning like nothing happened? That's how it felt walking into the office. I'd barely settled at my desk when the email landed. A stark 3-paragraph announcement from HR. Effective immediately. Ethics violations. Professional misconduct. Each word felt like another brick falling from Melissa's carefully constructed facade. My phone buzzed. A text from my friend in marketing. OMG, did you see? The office hummed with whispers. Through the glass walls, I watched clusters form and dissolve, heads bent together in urgent conversation. Someone from legal hurried past, clutching a stack of folders. The air crackled with that electric feeling you get when scandal breaks. Everyone trying to look professional while dying to discuss it. Julia? It was Sandra from HR hovering at my desk. Your new office is ready whenever you'd like to move in. My new office. Melissa's old office, the corner suite with its sprawling city view. Thanks, I managed. I'll head up shortly. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than usual. Remember when we were kids, and Melissa would hold the treehouse ladder, swearing she wouldn't let me fall? Then she'd shake it, just enough to make me doubt, just enough to keep me scared. The office door stood open. Sunlight poured through the windows, catching dust motes in their dance. A single cardboard box sat centered on the massive desk, Melissa's personal items, packed by HR. The nameplate was already gone. Quite a morning, isn't it? I turned to find Thomas from business development leaning against the doorframe. His expression was grim. Words spreading fast, he continued. Harrison Partners already pulled their offer. They were courting her for their board, and the Women in Leadership Council, they're scrubbing her from their mentor registry. My stomach tightened. That fast? He nodded. Too many bridges burned, too many people waiting for her to fall. He glanced at his phone. Your sister's gone radio silent, by the way. Her LinkedIn's already stripped bare. The weight of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just a career setback. This was professional extinction. Every connection she'd cultivated, every favor she'd banked, gone. Her reputation, that gleaming armor she'd polished for decades, had shattered overnight. I moved to the windows, pressing my palm against the cool glass. Below, the city stretched out like a promise. How many times had Melissa stood here, plotting her next power play? How many careers had she surveyed from this height, deciding which to crush? The cardboard box caught my eye again. Inside, a framed industry award, a designer pen set, photos of Melissa at charity galas, the careful curation of a life spent climbing. But something was missing, any trace of family. No childhood photos, no holiday snapshots. Not even that silver frame Mom gave us both last Christmas. Julia? It was Sandra again. Your things arrived from storage. 2 maintenance workers carried in my boxes. I thanked them, then reached for the smallest one, marked fragile in careful letters. Remember last spring when Melissa saw my bonsai and laughed? God, Jules, could you be any more basic? It'll die in a week, just like everything else you try to nurture. But it didn't die. Through divorce, through setbacks, through her constant undermining, it thrived. I'd learned to prune it just enough, to let it grow strong but controlled, to find beauty in its patience. I lifted it from its box now, this living lesson in resilience. The morning light caught its leaves, turning them to emerald fire. Carefully, I placed it on the desk, my desk, where Melissa's nameplate had been. "Oh, that's lovely," Sandra murmured from the doorway. "It is, isn't it?" I adjusted it slightly. "Some things grow better in the shade." A gentle knock interrupted us. Franklin stood there holding a fresh nameplate. "Julia Merritt, Senior Strategist." "Ready to make it official?" he asked. I looked around the office, my office, at the city beyond, at the morning sun painting everything gold, at my small, strong tree that had weathered every storm. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." My first week as Senior Strategist felt like walking through a lucid dream. The corner office still held echoes of Melissa, lingering perfume, ghost impressions on the carpet where her furniture had stood. But with each passing day, the space became more mine. You know that feeling when you're trying on confidence and it starts to fit? That's how it was. Small changes at first, rearranging the desk to face the door instead of the window, switching the harsh overhead lights for warm desk lamps, leaving my door open unless I was in meetings. Thursday morning, I called my first team gathering. My hands weren't even shaking as I stood at the head of the conference table, though I'll admit my coffee cup stayed close. 20 faces looked back at me, a mix of curiosity and caution. They'd been burned before. They were waiting to see if I'd be different. "I know the past few weeks have been intense," I started, earning a few nervous chuckles. "So let's talk about where we're going from here." I laid out my vision. Collaborative projects where everyone got credit for their contributions. Open-door policy for concerns and ideas. Regular check-ins that focused on growth, not gotchas. Clear paths for advancement based on merit, not politics. And starting today, I added, we're scrapping the mandatory Saturday sessions. The relief in the room was palpable. Those weekend meetings had been Melissa's favorite power play. Last-minute scheduling, arbitrary agendas, mostly designed to remind everyone who controlled their time. Remember when we were kids and Mom would let us help bake cookies? How the kitchen filled with warmth and possibility. That's what it felt like, watching hope creep back into my team's expressions. "One more thing," I said, pulling up our project tracking system. "I've reviewed our delivery protocols. The emergency escalation policy, gone. No more 3 a.m. panic calls because someone might want a minor revision tomorrow." Marcus, our senior copywriter, actually closed his eyes in relief. He'd been on the receiving end of those midnight demands more than most. "Instead," I continued, "we're implementing proper workflow management, regular hours, reasonable deadlines, and when we need to push hard for a genuine crisis, you'll get comp time to recover." The energy in the room shifted. Shoulders relaxed. Someone in the back row wiped their eyes. After the meeting, I found 3 thank you notes on my desk. Real ones. Handwritten. "Finally feeling heard," said one. "Like I can breathe again," said another. Around 2 o'clock, Sarah, one of our junior analysts, knocked on my open door. Her eyes were bright, but not with tears this time. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I gestured to the chair across from me. "Always." She settled in, fidgeting with her sleeve. I wanted you to know something. Before, under," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "the previous leadership, I used to sit in my car every morning and cry before coming in. Sometimes I'd circle the block 3 times before I could make myself park." My heart squeezed. How many others had suffered similarly? "But this week," Sarah continued, "I actually smiled walking into the building. I told my mom I love my job again." She glanced at my bonsai, its leaves catching the afternoon light. It's like the whole office can finally breathe. After she left, I stood at the window, watching the city pulse below. A memory surfaced. Melissa and me as teenagers, tending Mom's garden. I'd loved the delicate flowers, pansies, bleeding hearts, morning glories. Melissa preferred the aggressive vines that choked out everything else. "You have to dominate the space," she'd said, "or you'll never bloom at all." But she'd been wrong. My bonsai proved that. Growing doesn't require domination. Sometimes it just needs patience, care, and room to unfold. The sun broke through a bank of clouds, flooding the office with golden light. My small tree cast intricate shadows across the desk, no longer hiding in darkness, but dancing with the light. I touched one perfect leaf, remembering all the shadows I'd grown through. Melissa's constant undermining, the stolen credits, the sabotaged interviews. Each one could have broken me. Instead, they'd made me stronger, wiser, ready. I grew in the shadows. Now I bloom in the sun. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.